Hi friends, welcome back. In this video, we will understand how to deploy Java web application by using Jenkins CI/CD pipeline. In this pipeline project, we will use several DevOps tools like GitHub, Maven, Jenkins, Docker, and Kubernetes. In order to set up this pipeline, the steps I have documented and the document link I have given in description of this video. And before getting started, a small request from my side. Please subscribe to our channel and give me a like for this video and support us to create more useful videos like this. Alright, now let's understand the execution flow of our CI/CD pipeline. Developers will push their code into GitHub repository. Once the code is pushed to GitHub repository, then we need to build and deploy that code. Instead of doing the build and deployment manually, we can use Jenkins to automate that build and deployment process. Jenkins tool will connect with the GitHub repository and it is going to clone that GitHub repository. Then Jenkins will communicate with the Maven. Maven is a build tool for the Java applications. Maven will build our application. That means Maven will compile the project and will package the project as a jar file or war file. Once the Maven package got completed, then we need to build Docker image for our application. Jenkins will communicate with the Docker to build the Docker image. Once the Docker image is created, then we can deploy that Docker image by using Kubernetes cluster. So this is what we need to set up. So here if you observe, we are using GitHub, Maven, Jenkins, Docker, and Kubernetes. Are you guys clear what we are going to do for today? Today we are setting up one DevOps project using CI/CD pipeline with the help of these tools. I have created one document in the GitHub repository, project setup using these tools. So my project is already available in the GitHub repository. So developers will give the code in the GitHub repository. I have my Git repository ready. Now I need to automate this project build and deployment process using these tools. So first let me set up the Jenkins software. So the first step is Jenkins server setup. So I'm going to create one EC2 instance in order to set up the Jenkins server. Launch instance. I'm going to take T2 medium instance because if you go for micro, 1 GB RAM is not sufficient to run all these tools. That's the reason I'm going for medium instance, which will give 4 GB RAM. I will be using AMI as Ubuntu. Instance type, I'm going with the medium because I want more RAM. So 4 GB RAM we will get for the medium instance. Key pair to login. So I have key pair already created. I'm using the existing one. Default VPC we are using. Security group. So if you have the security group already, you can select it. I'm selecting the default security group. Let's click on launch instance. One EC2 instance we are creating with the Ubuntu OS. Once this instance is created, let's connect it to this instance by using Mobile Extrom. As it is Ubuntu VM, the default username will be Ubuntu. So let us take this public IP address and connect it to this machine from the Mobile Extrom. Session SSH remote host username. This is Ubuntu machine. So let me give the name as Ubuntu. Select the key pair that we have used to create this machine. Click on OK. Make sure you have enabled SSH port number in the security group. So as I'm able to connect, that means SSH port number is enabled in the selected security group. So once this machine got created, then we need to install Java and we need to install Jenkins in our machine. In order to install that Jenkins software, Java is required because Jenkins is developed using Java language. So let's go to official Jenkins website to understand the Jenkins installation process. I want to install the Jenkins in the Linux machine. That Linux machine is using Ubuntu operating system. Go to Ubuntu, select the Ubuntu option. Long-term support is available. Weekly release is available. We will use long-term support. Before going to install the Jenkins, first we need to install the Java. So let me take this sudo apt update. Let's update the existing packages in this machine. It is downloading the updates. Once the packages update got completed, so take this command to install the Java. Confirm this. Yes, install the Java. Yes. Once the Java is installed, we can verify the version of Java. Java space - version. It installed OpenJDK version 17. So once Java installation got completed, now we are good to install Jenkins software. Then let's go to long-term support. This is the script available. Let's copy this script and execute this in our machine. Paste this script and execute it. It is going to install Jenkins software, asking for confirmation. Yes, continue with the installation process. Yes, guys, the installation process got completed. Jenkins got installed. Now we need to start the Jenkins service here. So there are commands available to start this. So start the Jenkins by using this command, sudo systemctl enable Jenkins. Go to this cmd and execute this command. It is enabling the Jenkins. Once it is enabled, then let us start the Jenkins. Copy this command, start the Jenkins. Then you can check the status of the Jenkins. Take this command and you check the status of the Jenkins. You can see Jenkins status is active. The Jenkins server is up and running. Okay. Once the Jenkins status is active, then we can access our Jenkins server in the browser. Jenkins will run by default on the port number 8080. Go to the security group attached to this machine. Check that security group inbound rules. If 8080 is not enabled, we need to enable that port number. Yes, you guys can see that here 8080 port number is available. If it is not available, please add the custom TCP port number as 8080. Select anywhere IPv4 here and click on save the rule. So with this, our security group rules updated with 8080 port number. Now go to this machine and take the public IP address and hit in the browser. Okay, :8080. Yes, it is opening Jenkins dashboard to unlock it. Okay, in order to unlock the Jenkins, we need to take the admin password. Admin password will be available in this location. Copy this path and go to the Jenkins machine. Let us use sudo cat the location to copy the password. Right, this is the Jenkins admin password. Let us copy this password and give it here. Click on continue. Okay, it is asking to install suggested plugins. Do you want to install any plugins? Yes, I want to install some suggested plugins. Select this option. Then we have to wait for some time. It will take time to install the required plugins. Fine, guys. The plugins installation got completed. It is asking to create one admin user. So let me give my username and my password, confirm password, full name, email address, then click on save and continue. So with this, the instance configuration is ready. This is our Jenkins URL. Remember which version of the Jenkins we are using, 2.426.2 version. Save and finish. Jenkins is ready. Jenkins setup is complete. Start using Jenkins. So brand new Jenkins server is ready. As of now, no jobs available in this Jenkins. We need to create the jobs in the Jenkins before that. So let us see, the first step got completed, Jenkins server setup. Then install Maven and Git in the Jenkins. Now, if you see here in the Jenkins machine, we can verify MVN-version. MVN is not available, but we can install that MVN. Similarly, Git-version. Git version is already available. You no need to install the Git separately. Git client is already available, but Maven is not available. This Maven you can use in two ways. You can install the Maven directly in the Jenkins machine, or you can configure Maven as a global tool. So let me go with the Maven as a global tool. So let me configure Maven as a global tool. Go to Manage Jenkins, go to Tools, then scroll down here. You can select Maven installations, add Maven. You can give some name for the Maven. I'm giving Maven 3.9.6. That is the Maven version I'm selecting. I'm selecting install automatically. Instead of we are installing the Maven in the Jenkins machine directly, we are configuring Maven as a global tool in the Jenkins. Click on apply, then click on save. So with this, Maven is ready in our Jenkins machine. Step 2 also completed. Then step 3, set up Docker in the Jenkins. Why? Because as you see in our diagram, Jenkins machine should communicate with the Git to get the code. Git client is already available in the Jenkins machine. Jenkins should communicate with the Maven to do the build. Maven is configured as a global tool. Now Jenkins should build a Docker image. So Jenkins should communicate with the Docker. So that's why we need to install the Docker in our Jenkins machine. So let us see the steps to install the Docker in our Jenkins machine. So let me take this command to install the Docker in this Ubuntu machine. Curl command I am using to download that Docker software. Once it is downloaded, then we are going to add the Jenkins user to the Docker group. So that's why I'm using user mode command. I'm adding Jenkins user to this Docker group by using user mode command. Done. Then after, let us restart our Jenkins. Then if you go to the Jenkins, it will ask you to re-log in. Okay. As we have restarted, we logged out from this one. We can re-log in now by using our credentials we have used to create the admin account. I'm trying to log in into Jenkins machine again. We are good to go. So with this, third step is also completed. We are able to install the Docker in the Jenkins machine. First step, we configured the Jenkins VM. We installed Java and Jenkins. Then we configured Maven as a global tool, and we installed Docker in the Jenkins machine. Next one, create EKS management host in the AWS. So we want to create one Kubernetes cluster in the AWS. For that, we are going to use EKS CTL. Kubernetes cluster we are creating by using EKS. For that, we are going to create one machine. That machine we are calling as management host. In that machine, we will install EKS CTL, kubectl, AWS CLI, and we are going to launch Kubernetes cluster. In order to launch the Kubernetes cluster, for this machine, the AWS services permissions are required. For those permissions, we are going to create one IAM role, and that IAM role we will attach to our Jenkins machine. Once that process is completed, then we will create our Kubernetes cluster. So let me create EKS management host. You can take normal EC2 instance with T2 micro, and you can install the required softwares in that. So let me go to AWS EC2 dashboard. Let me create one EC2 instance. Launch EC2 instance. That instance you can use with T2 micro as I told you, right? Now let me go to EC2 dashboard and let me launch one EC2 instance. This machine name I'm giving as EKS host VM. Ubuntu AMI I am selecting for this one. T2 micro we are using, which is free tier eligible. Key pair name already available, Ashok IT key pair. Network settings, security group, I'm using default security group, in which 22 port number is already enabled. Then launch this machine. So if you see the configuration, we are using one EC2 instance with Ubuntu AMI, T2 micro instance type, key pair I have selected, default VPC with the default security group. I'm launching this machine. This machine which we are launching now is used to create Kubernetes cluster. So once this machine is started, let us connect with this machine using Mobile Extron. Take this public IP address, go to here, IP address, username, as it is a Ubuntu machine, username will be Ubuntu, key pair, which is Ashok IT, selected. Okay. Done. Now let us install the required softwares in this machine. I have given in the Git repo clearly. Connect with the machine and install kubectl. For the installing the kubectl, this is the command. What is kubectl? It is a CLI which is used to communicate with the Kubernetes cluster. Right. Then give the permission for the kubectl by using chmod command. Then I am moving this from one location to another location using mv command. Then after, you can check the version of the kubectl. Kubectl is installed or not. Yes, kubectl installed. It is used to communicate with the Kubernetes cluster. Once it is done, then let us go for AWS CLI. Let us install AWS CLI here. Download this AWS CLI zip file using this curl command. Then unzip that CLI. Then install that. Yes, AWS CLI 2.15.1 version got installed. We are good as of now. Next one, install EKSCTL. It is a command line utility to create the Kubernetes cluster from the CLI. Let us download this EKSCTL. Then after, let us move this from this temp location to user local bin directory. Then after, verify the EKSCTL version. Yes, it is installed. 0.166.0 version is installed. So with this, we are able to install kubectl, AWS CLI, and EKSCTL in one Linux machine. We are calling that as a EKS management host. This machine is used to launch EKS cluster in the AWS. Once it is done, to launch the cluster for that machine, the permissions are required. So we need to create one IAM role in the AWS by adding these permissions. Then that role we need to add to the EKS management host machine. Okay, let me go to IAM service in the AWS cloud. Identity and access management, which is used to deal with users, user groups, roles, and policies. Okay, here, go to the roles. You check for the roles, what is available here. So here, AWS EKS role is available. Last activity 27 minutes ago. So here, if you observe, EKSCTL roles will be available. If the role is not available, you need to create that role. So this role is used to provide the permissions for the services. So AWS services, use case for the EC2 instance, I'm creating this role. Then go to next. What are the permissions we need to add? You see here, I have given the list of permissions: IAM, VPC, EC2, CloudFormation, and administrator access. Let us select those permissions which are required for this. Okay. Now, so here administrator access, then EC2 full access is required. Let us select this EC2 full access. Then next one, VPC full access. Then IAM full access. Administrator access is selected. Cloud formation access, full access I have selected. Total 5 policies I have selected. What are those policies? IAM full access, VPC full access, EC2 full access, cloud formation full access, and administrator access. So once we have selected these things, then go to next and give the name for the role. So you can give the name of the role. I'm giving AWS EKS cluster role. Okay, you can give any name for that. You can see what are the policies you have selected for that role. All the policies we have selected which are required. Then click on create role. So with this, we are creating a role that is required to launch our EKS cluster. Go to view role. The role is created, and what are the policies available in the role also you can monitor. You can add the new policies, or we can remove the existing policies based on the requirement. Once the role is created, then attach that role to our EC2 instance that we have created. EKS management to host machine is available, right? So go to this EKS host VM, then go to actions, go to security, modify IAM role. So what is the role that we need to give that we created just now? AWS EKS cluster role we have created. Update the IAM role for that machine. Because that machine should create the cluster. To create the cluster, that machine required permissions for the services in the AWS. That's why we added that role to that machine. Okay. Attach created role to Jenkins machine also. We have added to the EKS host machine. The same role we are attaching to our Jenkins VM also, because the Jenkins machine is also going to communicate with the cluster for the deployment purpose. Let us go to our dashboard. Then let us see the instances which are running. For EKS host machine, I have added the role already. Now go to Jenkins server, action, security, modify the role, attach the role that we have created. Remember, we created the Jenkins VM. For the Jenkins VM, we have added the IAM role that we have created, and we have added the role for EKS host VM also. Jenkins VM is used to deploy the application to the cluster. EKS host VM is used to create the cluster. Got it. So with this, our EKS host VM is ready with the required role. Once it is done, finally, we are going to create our EKS cluster by using EKSCTL. So this is the command which we are using to create the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, EKSCTL create the cluster. You can give some name for the cluster. You can specify the region, in which region you want to create the cluster, and what are the availability zones you want to create your worker nodes, right? So here I want to create the cluster in the Mumbai. When I'm creating the cluster in the Mumbai, I need to give the availability zones related to Mumbai, AP South 1A and AP South 1B. So two availability zones I'm going to give, AP South 1A, AP South 1B. I have updated the availability zones as per Mumbai region. This is the command. Take this command. Before going to create the cluster, let us verify that in the EKS service, Elastic Kubernetes service, the most trusted way to start, run, and scale Kubernetes. Check, is there any cluster which is already available in our account? Clusters. Currently, there is no cluster is available. Okay. Take this command, execute it. It is going to communicate with AWS EKS service, and it is going to create the cluster. Remember, the cluster creation may take up to 5 minutes of time. It will create the CloudFormation stack. It will create the EKS cluster. It will create the worker nodes. It will attach the worker nodes to our control plane, which is provided by AWS EKS. We have to wait till our cluster creation got completed. It will take 5 minutes of time. Right, guys, now you can see our EKS cluster is ready in the Mumbai region. You can see that there are 2 worker nodes got created. Those worker nodes status is ready. Just 2 minutes ago, those worker nodes got created, right? So you can check that, is there any resources available in the kubectl get all? So currently no resources are available. It is a brand new cluster. Now we need to deploy our application into this Kubernetes cluster. Good. Let's come back to our document. 6th step also got completed. Cluster is ready. Then let's go and install AWS CLI in the Jenkins server. Let us install AWS CLI. Then unzip that CLI, install that CLI, then check the version. Is it installed up? Let us check the version. Okay, we are good. Then next one, install kubectl in the Jenkins server. Already we installed kubectl in the EKS host VM, right? Same kubectl we are installing in the Jenkins VM also, so that Jenkins can connect with the Kubernetes cluster by using kubectl for the deployment process. Give the permission for that. Then move this to the user local bin directory. Then verify kubectl. Okay, good. So with this, kubectl is installed in the Jenkins VM also. Now, the most important part, integrating Jenkins and Kubernetes cluster. For that, we need to take the Kubernetes cluster config file and we need to configure that in the Jenkins machine. Why? Because my Jenkins machine should communicate with the Kubernetes cluster to do the deployment. How the Jenkins machine will know where is the Kubernetes cluster? Cluster configuration we need to update in the Jenkins machine. The cluster configuration will be available in the kubeconfig file. That kubeconfig file, if we keep in the Jenkins machine, then Jenkins machine will know where is the Kubernetes cluster. Then Jenkins will do the deployment in the Kubernetes cluster directly. So this step is very important. Update EKS cluster config file in the Jenkins server. So how to get that config file? So by using this command, you can get the config file. So which machine we use it to create the cluster? EKS host VM we used. So if you execute cat.kube/config, it will give you the cluster configuration. This is our kubeconfig file. What is kubeconfig file? Kubeconfig file contains Kubernetes cluster information. Okay, we need to use this command to copy the kubeconfig file. Then we need to paste that config file in the Jenkins server. Be very careful here. This command we need to execute in the EKS host VM to copy the content. Then these commands we need to execute in the Jenkins machine to copy that file data into Jenkins VM. Once this process is completed, if you execute this command, we should be able to see the nodes of the Kubernetes cluster from the Jenkins VM. Okay. Now let me go to the Jenkins VM and let me create the required directories. Go to the Jenkins VM, go to this directory where lib Jenkins, that is default Jenkins directory. Okay. Then in this directory, let me make one directory called .cube. We are making it as a hidden directory. Sudo mkdir .cube directory we have created. Then we are going to create one file inside the cube directory by using vi editor sudo vi .cube/config. That means inside the cube directory, I want to create one config file. Go to the insert mode, then copy the config information by using cat command. In the EKS host VM, we got the kube config file data. Let us copy this kube config file data and let us update this in the Jenkins VM. Once it is done, save this file. So with this, our environment setup is done. Okay. So step up to 9 we have completed. With this, we are good. We should be able to see the EKS cluster nodes from the Jenkins machine. That means our Jenkins machine is able to access the cluster by using kubectl. Now we need to create the Jenkins job. Okay, good. Now let me go to our Jenkins. Jenkins dashboard is available. Let me log in into my Jenkins VM. Finally, our setup is ready. Now we are going to create the actual Jenkins job to automate the build and deployment process. In order to do that, I'm going to use Jenkins CI/CD pipeline. Okay, Ashok IT CI job I'm creating. Good. Now select the pipeline, click on OK. I'm going to use declarative pipeline to automate the build and deployment process of this application. Okay, this is our pipeline syntax that we are going to write here. So let me take a sample pipeline. Let me take the sample pipeline. Hello world pipeline is available. Agent any stages hello. What is our first stage? Clone repo. I want to clone the GitHub repository here. In order to clone the GitHub repository, we need to specify the pipeline syntax. Go to our pipeline syntax, specify what you want to do. I want to clone my Git repository. Where is the repository? In the GitHub. Let us take this GitHub repository URL and let us give the repository URL. What is the branch name? The default branch is master. You give the correct branch name. As it is a public repository, credentials are not required. Generate the script. The script is generated. Copy this script and configure this as a stage. Right. This is our first step. Let us apply and save it. Let us run our job. Let us see, are we able to clone the Git repository by using our Jenkins job or not? Let me click on build now. First build we are executing. First build got success. What is the meaning of that? We are able to clone our Git repository by using Jenkins declarative pipeline. It finished with the success status. Okay. So as per the diagram, our first step is success. We are able to clone the Git repository. Then what is our second step? We need to build that by using Maven. We need to execute Maven goal. Let us go to our job. Let us configure the job now. Go to the pipeline. Let us add one more stage, that is Maven build stage. Let me add Maven build stage. What we will do with the Maven build stage? We are going to execute mvn clean package. I want to package my application. This is a Java application, right? Java web application. I want to package this application as a WAR file. For that, I am using Maven goal. For that, I am using Maven goal. Right. Now, let us use apply and save. Let me run the job now. Earlier, we had only one stage. Now, I added one more stage to do the Maven build. Click on build now. Let us see, is it working as expected or not? Go to the build number and see why this build got failed. Go to build number 2 and check the console output. Now see here, first stage got executed successfully. Git clone completed successfully. Second stage, Maven clean package executed, but it failed. What it is saying? MVN not found. So that means when this job is executing, it is not able to identify where is the Maven. So Maven is installed in the Jenkins machine, or Maven is configured as a global tool. Maven is configured as a global tool. So we need to tell that it has to use the Maven from the global tool. So go to the global tools. We added the Maven here, right? We have given some name for the Maven. Okay, Maven installations we have given 3.9.6. I need to tell to the pipeline that it should refer the Maven as a global tool. So go to the pipeline and edit that. Okay, go to our Jenkins pipeline. Configure means edit. Then go to the pipeline. Let us configure the tools. What are the global tools that we are using in our application? So to specify the tools in our application, we will use a section called tools section. Inside the tools section, I'm specifying that this is my Maven, which I configured as a global tool. Okay. If you install the Maven directly on your Jenkins machine, then you no need to configure this. But installing directly on the Jenkins machine not recommended. That's why we are adding that as a global tool, and we are referring that global tool as part of our pipeline. Click on apply, click on save. Now let us do the build again. Second build got failed because Maven was not configured in the pipeline. Now I have fixed that issue. Let's try. Build now. Declarative tools to install. Yes, Maven is configured as a tool in the declarative pipeline. First stage, cloning the repository. Second stage, Maven build. Jenkins job is executed. It is cloning the code from the Git repository. It is doing the Maven build. Now what we need to do? We need to build Docker image for our application. We need to create one stage in order to create the Docker image for our application. Okay, let me add one more stage in the pipeline. Go to the configure option. Now go to the pipeline. Let me add next stage. Build image. Docker image building. Okay. So as we know, Docker image creation we will do by using Docker build command. So what is the syntax to create the Docker image here? Docker build -t image tag name that we are going to specify. You can give any name. I'm giving the image name as Ashok IT / Maven web app. Okay, you can give any name for the image. I'm giving the image name as Ashok IT / Maven web app. Okay, you can give any name for that. Then click on apply, then click on save. Okay, before going to run this job, let us check in the Jenkins VM. Do we have any Docker images? Okay, sudo Docker images. Do we have any images in our machine? As of now, there are no images available in our machine. Okay, let me go and do the job now, job execution. Earlier, we have two stages. Now, third stage is available to do the Docker image creation. Docker image creation got failed. Go to that, console output, check, image name. Okay, we did not specify where the Docker file is available. Okay, we need to specify the dot there to locate the Docker file. In order to build the Docker image, Docker file is required. If you see in our GitHub repository, Docker file is already available. In this Docker file, the instructions are available to build Docker image. So copy the war file from the target directory to the Tomcat directory. We are using Tomcat as a base image. As it is a Java web application, Tomcat is required to run this application. So Docker file is available. Let us specify the path of the Docker file, space dot. Click on apply, click on save. Now do the build again. Yes, guys, success. We are able to build a Docker image for our application. Go to this build number, go to the console output. You can check that. Here, Docker image creation started. Docker build command. After Maven build got success, then our Docker image creation got started. Docker image created successfully. Finished status success. You can check here. Earlier, when I execute Docker images command, there is no image available. Now, when I execute, we are able to see Ashok IT Maven web app Docker image is created. Image ID is available. Image name is available. Once the Docker image is available, then what we need to do? We need to deploy that Docker image by using Kubernetes cluster. Already, cluster information we updated in the Jenkins. Now, Jenkins can deploy our application in the Kubernetes cluster by using Kubernetes manifest YML. So if you see in the Git repository, I have added Kubernetes manifest YML file also, Maven web app deployment.yml. I'm creating Kubernetes deployment by using deployment, kind as a deployment. Then two replicas, I want to create two pods. Deployment strategy, I'm giving as a recreation. Then pod labels, we are configuring as app:/Maven web app. I want to pull the Docker image. This is the image name, Ashok IT /Maven web app. So if you see at the time of image creation, also I have given the same name, Ashok IT /Maven web app. If you give the different name for the image creation, you need to update that in the manifest YML. Container will be running on the port number 8080. So once the pods are created, we cannot access the pods outside of the cluster. We need to expose the pods by using Kubernetes service. As we discussed, there are three types of services available in the Kubernetes. One is the cluster IP, second one is a node port, third one is a load balancer. Here, my pods replicas are two. Two pods will be created. There are two worker nodes available. You can create multiple pods. I'm giving the replica count as 2. And those two pods I want to expose by using Kubernetes service. How this service will expose the pods? Pod label, we are going to configure as a service selector. Okay, and service type I'm giving as a load balancer. You can give node port also. When you give the service type as a load balancer, in the AWS, EC2 service will be used to create that load balancer. Go and check it here currently in the load balancers. Is there any load balancer available in the AWS? Currently, there is no load balancer is available. When we do the deployment by using our deployment manifest YML, the load balancer will be created to expose our pods. Pods are creating by using deployment approach, and those pods are exposed by using load balancer service. Okay, manifest YML is also ready. Now, let us add one more stage in our Jenkins pipeline to do the Kubernetes deployment. Let us go to the job, configure this job. Now I am adding the deployment also in the single job. Later we can separate CI process and CD process. Now Docker image creation got completed. Once image creation is completed, let me add the stage for the Kubernetes deployment. Okay, Docker image is there, then Kubernetes deployment. What is the command to do the Kubernetes deployment, guys? Already in the Jenkins, we have installed kubectl. So simply let us use kubectl apply -f our deployment manifest YML. So what is our manifest YML? Maven web app deployment.yml. That's it. So when we execute this command, it will execute the manifest YML by using kubectl. Kubectl already knows where is the Kubernetes cluster available. Kubectl will send a request to control plane API server. API server will schedule that. Scheduler is going to schedule the pods by using etcd database. The Kubernetes architecture flow is going to execute. Once the deployment is completed successfully, we should be able to see the load balancer in the AWS in order to access our application, which is running in the cluster, because the pods we are exposing by using load balancer service. Okay, click on apply and save it. Let me run the job. Earlier, we have only 3 stages in the job. Now we have added the 4th stage, which is Kubernetes deployment. Click on build now. Kubernetes deployment stage completed successfully. So here you can verify really is it created or not. You can go to your Jenkins machine. You can check kubectl get pods command. Yes, perfect. 2 pods created just now. 57 seconds ago, the pods got created. kubectl get a service also you can verify. Yes, a service also created for our application with a service type as a load balancer. Now, verify whether this load balancer created in the AWS or not. Go to AWS load balancer in the EC2. You can see the load balancers option. Earlier, we don't have any load balancers. Now refresh. Now you can see that one load balancer got created just now. Now go inside, go to this load balancer and check the what is the DNS name of the load balancer. The DNS name is available. This is the URL which is used to access the load balancer. This load balancer will run by default on the port number 80, which is the default port. So you need to check in the security group that 80 port number is enabled or not. So go to the security group ID. HTTP 80 port number should be enabled. Go to the inbound rules. Check this. Yes, that port number 80 is already enabled. So we are good to go. We can access our application by using load balancer DNS. So copy this load balancer DNS URL, go to the browser and type this DNS URL in the browser. It is taking time. Yes, when I hit the DNS URL, it loaded our Tomcat server because our application is deployed into the Tomcat server. How to access the application which is running in the Tomcat server? By using application name. What is the name of the application? If you check in the Docker file, you will understand that. What is the WAR file we are copying? The WAR file name will become our application name, application context path. So in the Docker file, you see, I'm copying this WAR file to the Tomcat web apps folder, right? Web apps folder is a deployment folder. This WAR file name will be our context path. Now go to that load balancer URL and give WAR file name at the end. That is called context path of our application. Now when we hit that URL, we should be able to access our application. Now see here, we are able to access our application which is deployed in the Kubernetes cluster.